Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura Hanson with Connect My Brain. Thanks so much for tuning in. I just love connecting with you each week and sharing different pieces of information and just wanting to take people that next step. And what we're focused on right now in this series is nutrition. And working on your nutrition is definitely a job. It's hard and it can be incredibly overwhelming. So I'm really hoping through this time together that we can start to break down these elements. One, make it easier to understand. When you understand why you're looking at things in a different way, I think it's just easier to make a more educated decision. But if you don't know the importance of it, or you don't know why you should go in a particular way, that's just going to generate some stress. So the first part of this series, we really focused on the why. Why should you be focused, or why should you pay attention to your nutrition? Here at Connect My Brain, we work on a 3-pillar approach, and we look at the mechanics, we look at the chemistry, and then we look at the brain. Principally in working with children, the mechanical piece is all about understanding how that body and brain get wired up together. When you come into this world, you are fully formed, but you are not fully functioning. You have to go through this movement progression in order to wire up your brain. And in fact, it actually starts in the womb. If you've ever been pregnant, you certainly heard either your obstetrician or your midwife say to you, "Do you feel the baby move?" Those neurological connections are happening even in the womb, and it is necessary for babies to move in the womb and definitely when they get out into the world. So we have a schematic of developmental milestones in order to look at that progression. I even thought many years ago that we all develop whenever we develop. It's no timeline. And I can tell you that is completely false. And even today, there are still pediatricians that are telling parents that it's okay if your child is still bedwetting and they're 9 years old. And it's okay if your baby doesn't crawl. And it's okay if your child walks at 3. It's a timeline. It's about giving you a signpost on the outside how things are going with the development of that child. And a child that is still wetting the bed, there can be so many issues surrounding the why. So just pushing it aside, I don't ever think is the right thing to do. I also don't think we should create so much stress that we cannot move into a positive direction. But when you work with development, it's easier to kind of take a step back, look at a few pearls by looking at those developmental milestones so that we can begin a program, begin a path of moving that child to a more expected developmental acquisition. So what does that have to do with chemistry? Well, all those different steps that you go through, your body is dependent on chemistry in order to make things move correctly, get wired up correctly. There is a chemical part to everything we do. The other half of what we look at is your brain. So as I was just saying, you don't come into this world completely wired up. So you go from your low brain to your midbrain to your high brain. You could have something going on in your development that has changed how the brain waves are actually organized and firing. And that is going to lead to outcomes, even things like attention issues, dyslexia, oppositional defiance, autism. If you're an adult, perhaps you've gone through things your whole life, or maybe it wasn't even your whole life, but now you're at a place that you're very anxious, you're depressed, you're having trouble sleeping. There can be so many things going on, but that has to do with what's going on in the brain and how those brain waves are actually firing. Now, it's never meant to say that this is an isolated therapy, because neurofeedback is not an isolated therapy, but it can work in conjunction with many other therapies available to us. But even when it comes to neurofeedback, I want to know about your chemistry. For example, we have patients that come in that have been told they're bipolar. One of the things that I have found that has a chemistry connection is looking at the MTHFR gene. And if there is a double mutation, there is a tendency for a greater likelihood of different types of mood disorder, and bipolar is one of them. So combining your neurofeedback with looking at, let's say, a genetic snippet, and then supporting that pathway in conjunction with anything else that you want to do, is really addressing the whole body. Oftentimes I have said I could be really great at putting together a movement program, working neurofeedback. But if a person does not look at their chemistry, it is very difficult to make things stick. Why? Because you are a chemical palette. You have so many things going on inside of you at one time. We have to be conscious of how those different pathways work. Now, I'm certainly not trying to turn this into a biochemistry program. I certainly don't have enough time. I try to keep the podcast somewhere between 30 and 35 minutes. So what I've decided is to narrow it down and take a look at one particular pathway. And it is how we generate energy. And energy is not just about the energy that you need to go walk on the treadmill, go to the gym, play tennis, go to your job. It is also the energy that is needed to run the body. So I'm expelling a lot of energy right now. I get very excited. I get very passionate when I get to speak to my community. And I want to give you the best. So I've got my energy levels way up, and I've got a plan put into place, and I'm moving through a sequence of information. But I'm going to burn some calorie while I go through this process. So when I get done, I'm going to go get something to eat to replenish my system. So I thought, let's talk about this energy pathway. This is the energy pathway that you see on the screen. Now, for my podcast audience, I'm going to be very descriptive, and I'm going to explain this chart. But when you get an opportunity, go over to YouTube. I have Dr. Laura Hanson's YouTube channel that is completely dedicated to the podcast. And so all the videos that we make through our recording, all of those videos go up over there. So whenever I am sharing my screen with something, I'm going to let you know, but I also want you to go over there and look at it. But even more importantly, during this series, I want you to share this information. It is so important that we start educating our community and letting people be aware that they can learn how to eat properly. You can understand different pathways and why it is important to look at these pathways and make educated decisions. Now, there's a really good chance when I get done with this particular podcast, you might go out and get yourself a supplement. And all supplements are not created equal. So I have to address that with you. Most importantly, I would love for you to reach out to me. You are able to reach out to me no matter where you are. You can send a request through the website, and I am going to respond to you. Even though I'm right here in Atlanta, Georgia, I talk to people all over the globe, and we can either help you find resources in your immediate area, or we can guide you ourselves. But when you send in any kind of a request for some information, go ahead and tell me days and times that you're available, because it's going to really streamline and I can get back to you even faster. So we're going to look at a pathway. So what's up on the screen is the energy pathway. And it's showing you right here in the center. This is the citric acid cycle. And it has a very far-reaching effect. It's going to also support neurotransmitter metabolism, as well as the urea cycle. But in the middle, it's focusing on the production of ATP. And ATP is energy. It's energy that you're going to use outside of your body, and it's energy that you're going to use inside of your body. Okay? How you run it. Now, when we look up here at the top, it starts with food. So the first one is protein. Proteins are going to break down to amino acids. Then next to that is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are going to break down to glucose. Your fats are going to break down to fatty acids. Now, each of these come from different sources. Each of these carry different calories, and each of these have different functions. But the big idea is if I follow arrows, fatty acids are coming into citric acid. Glucose, carbohydrates is coming in to citric acid. Proteins, amino acids are coming into the citric acid cycle to make energy. So all food is going to be used in the making of energy. I think about, at this point, fad diets, FAD. So I can remember years ago when everybody was saying how bad fats were for you. So we pulled them out of the diet. We manufactured some artificial ones. People got so much gastrointestinal stress. People's skin started looking bad because fats are going to protect you, and they have the highest calorie. 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories, so it's going to sustain your energy the longest. But just like I said about supplements not all being equal, not all fats are equal. So we have good fats and we have bad fats. And obviously we would want a higher ratio of good fats. But when we make a combination of all 3 of these in a meal, we are creating balance into the system. I think it's very important to have support when you're trying to make headway about how to eat. I've heard this from so many different people in so many different social events, or even in my office, where people are getting recommended to do different things, but they have no idea why. When we make something also very drastic, when you've been living a particular lifestyle for quite some time, and then all of a sudden you're going to try to either do a detox, or you're going to do a keto diet, or you're going to do a paleo diet. It really doesn't matter. And I'm not judging any of these types of diets. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is, if the person really has no idea where their chemistry is, sometimes they can have adverse effect and then get turned off of doing anything. This is one of the reasons why I really like lab work. Lab work, to me, tells me the story of what's going on in the individual. And then we can make very specific changes and go back and measure it again and see that we have indeed made a change. So in this particular pathway, what I'd like you to try to pay attention to, and I know that it's small, but I'm going to start right up here at this blue box. So for my podcast audience, I'm over here. I'm going to start in the carbohydrate column. There is a box right beside it. And in that box, it has a variety of B vitamins and lipoic acid. I'm going to move down to the next tier where your glucose turns into pyruvate, but there's also another blue box with more B vitamins inside of it. If I go over here to amino acids, beside amino acid, there is a box with a bunch of B vitamins in it. If I go all the way over here to fat, as it goes from carnitine, now going into cholesterol, we've got biotin, which is a B vitamin. But then before it goes from its next conversion, there is a huge box of B vitamins, lipoic acid, and magnesium. Now, as we move around the cycle, I'm just going to highlight B vitamin, cysteine, iron, glutathione, B vitamin, magnesium, magnese, B vitamin, lipoic acid. Now we've got some dumping of ATP. We're coming back up. We've got some more B vitamin, iron. Are you getting my point? What did you hear me say the most? 1, 2, 3, B vitamins. Where do we get most of our B vitamins? From animal protein. So when we look at our energy pathway, we can compare it back to our diet and see if the source of our food is actually generating the vitamins and cofactors needed to run the citric acid cycle in order to make energy. Now, just like I said, are you sitting there going, well, I'm not taking a B vitamin. Maybe I better get a B vitamin. Okay, hold on. All B vitamins are not created equal. Most of the time, people might get either B6 or B12, but B vitamins are actually called a B complex. They are synergistic. We've got B12, B2, B1, I'm seeing if there's other Bs just listed within our little B4, B3. There's lots of B vitamins. Therefore, if we go and highlight one part of a complex, you can change the whole cascade. This is why it is so important to have guidance so that you can make really educated decisions. One, when I first started practice, I didn't know that much about supplements. And I went with a very high-end supplement because it was sold to me as a practitioner as being one of the best vitamins. However, the first place that I went to practice, the people couldn't afford it, which was a great experience for me because it led me to start looking deeper. But ultimately, what this journey has brought to me is the need for more information and personalization, because we are all not the same. Now, you also heard me say glutathione. Somebody might go out there and say, oh, I'm going to get me some glutathione. Glutathione is one of the hardest supplements for your body to actually absorb because you make it. And then whatever you don't use, you reuptake it. So over the years, we can see how supplements have actually changed their molecular structure to try and help get those products into the body. This was the onset of liposomal products. Liposomal was protecting, the liposomes are protecting those molecules so that there is the chance for a more efficient delivery into the body. The minute you put something in your mouth, you are generating the feedback to your brain that's going to say, okay, something's coming down. We need to sterilize the gut. And that's where the acid is going to be secreted into the gut. And so many things that have been coming in are really getting killed right in the beginning before they even have a chance to get into the body. So if we take several steps back before we go, I heard this would be good, so therefore I'm going to take it. And we begin to understand, maybe I need some help. Maybe I need some guidance. Let me take a deeper look into me and what I need. And then I'm going to go into the next layer. I'm going to recommend labs, but not all labs are created equal. And, you know, with this tier, not all food is created equal. Not all supplements are created equal. And not all labs are created equal. Where do I go? That's why it's really important to work with someone that has put this into a functional aspect of their program so that you are making educated decisions to look through excellent labs that are going to help you really get down to what is the root issue for you and what it is that you truly need. So one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I look at MTHFR on every single patient. It's a very easy genetic snippet. I do it in combination with COMT, which is another gene, because MTHFR, which is your methylation pathway, feeds into COMT, which is referred to as COMT, which makes the neurotransmitters for your brain. This is a practice that has a pillar of mechanical chemical brain. I want to see how those two genetic snippets are working. And the MTHFR is a very, very common mutation. Many people have it. And many people can have different types of roller coaster experiences. But when I first got into this and I looked at that particular gene and I saw what it could potentially be associated with, problems with breaking down homocysteine, which, guess what, is part of your methylation pathway. It's how you also make glutathione. It's also how you make SAMe, sympathetic adrenal medullary, how you're balancing out your stress chemicals. And if you have a disruption in that, there's many factors that can be impacted and cause different problems. But when I saw this, and you could have a problem with inflammation. You could have a problem with mood disorders like bipolar, schizophrenia. I was like, why wouldn't anybody that has been diagnosed with such things like bipolar or schizophrenia, why wouldn't you be tested for this? If we could possibly balance out that body or at least improve the function, why wouldn't we do it? There are certain things that I believe we should be looking at in a so-called traditional healthcare model, but we don't do it. Then we also look at a cardiac panel. You see, here's a pathway showing you cholesterol is involved in making the neurotransmitters. Cholesterol has been given such a bad rap. You make 80% of your own cholesterol. You only get 20% of that from the foods that you eat. We have been generating cholesterol lowering medication for a very long time, to the point that I believe it is also one of the contributing factors that has led to generations of children that are not getting wired up right. In my 27 years, back around, let's see, this is 2023, so close to 13, 14 years ago, I had a tendency to see a lot of children diagnosed with autism. Doing a cholesterol particle test, every single one of these kids had low cholesterol, and their particle ratios were at no risk for cardiovascular disease. See, cholesterol was found associated to cardiovascular disease because whenever they would scope out vessels, and inside the vessel, there was inflammatory damage. And keep these buzzwords in mind. Remember, we've already been talking about MTHFR, inflammatory conditions. Yes, there's also high incidence of cardiac issues associated with MTHFR, not only behavior and mood, but when they would go and look inside of those vessels, they would find small particles of cholesterol where the vessel or inside the lumen of the blood vessel. And for the podcast audience, I'm literally holding up my hand in a circle because what they found was tearing of the lumen where small particles of cholesterol could very easily get trapped. But it wasn't cholesterol damaging the vessel. It was the inflammatory condition of that individual's body. And therefore, cholesterol got a bad rap. We just got to lower cholesterol in everybody. But now we've been doing this for so many years. I mean, my goodness, even Cheerios lowers your cholesterol, that now we've got kids, and I do a cardiac panel on every single child. They have cholesterol that can be anywhere from like 90 to 130. That is not enough to build a brain. And if you go and look on any type of internet search, you can see how cholesterol is associated with depression and other types of mood issues. So low cholesterol also has some very damaging outcomes. So high cholesterol does, low cholesterol does. But if you're just looking at a basic panel and you're not getting it broken down to look at the lipoproteins, to look at the particles, you're not getting the whole picture. And if your body makes 80% of it, don't you need to see what you're doing? And that way, if there are familiar tendencies, then you simply put that in combination to the management plan when you're making the recommendations for how are you going to take care of that patient. That's why having guidance as you walk through this is so helpful. So that's just looking at a genetic snippet, a cardiac panel, and then let's think a little bit about the food. So we do food sensitivity, and so many people have so many different opinions about food sensitivity testing. But here's the big picture idea. This is the way I use it. If you're showing up, first of all, let's say you're a picky eater, and this is all chemistry. If you're a picky eater, then you're not getting a wide variety of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. But then, because that's all you eat, and you've got some sick belly stuff going on, you're going to show reactions to those foods. And I don't believe that you truly have sensitivities to all those foods, but rather it is giving you a big picture of what's going on in the belly. And if you see what we're doing here is we're looking at several different components. We are not just limiting it to food. We are not just limiting it to a cardiac panel or to a genetic panel. We're looking at you, looking at a stool test. How you eliminate gives us an incredible picture. If we decide that we need an organic acid test, we can do an organic acid test. So all of these pieces literally create your map of who you are. It's like a matrix. So I put you in the middle, and I'm looking at your different systems and how are those systems talking to each other. So if I get to the stool test and I see that you've got intestinal permeability, well, no wonder you're showing reactions to food. If you've got SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, no wonder you're a picky eater or you got belly aches all the time. You put the pieces together, but what did I say just a few moments ago? If inflammation is the problem, I've got to lower the body burden and give you a chance to heal. If we don't give you a chance to heal, it's all you're doing is you're just not lighting the gasoline. The gasoline is still there, but you're just not making it go kaboom. And we want to eliminate it because that's how you bring health. This all goes down to a cellular level. And this is why looking at energy is so important. If we don't understand that everything goes down to that cell, and if we don't get that cell healthy, it's just a matter of time before more symptoms are going to start to creep up. And today, there are so many children that are not moving in the right direction. So many children. Before, we could talk about all the different labels: autism, ADD, Asperger, oppositional defiance, developmental delay. The list is endless. But there's also been more creeping in ever since the virus. With the last few years, our kids haven't been going anywhere. So they've become more lethargic. They're more internally thinking on everything that's going on, which can send feedback messages to the brain to keep them more focused internally than being part of a bigger world. That's going to change your chemistry. What's ever going on up here is eventually going to change the chemistry. It works in tandem all the time. When we bring information into the equation, it gives us insight and we can begin to change things quicker. We live in a world that wants everything done yesterday. If I only work one supplement at a time, one process at a time, it could take a very long time, and nobody wants to stick around for that. When you use diagnostic information, you're able to get to that root cause faster. And nothing is going to bring about that kind of information than by looking at what's going on inside of you. When we have those pieces, the outcome changes quickly. You are more aware of what your choices have been doing to your overall health. You might be sitting there thinking, wonder if this has anything to do with fill in the blank. Your food is your fuel. It's what keeps you going. It's what drives this body. We know if people don't eat, the outcome is not positive. So let's take a step back and think about our diet. Think about nutrition. Think about how everything that we eat, everything that we take, everything that we drink, everything that we breathe in is coming from the outside going in. What is it? Where is it coming from? Am I getting enough? And if you resonate with any of the things that I've been talking about, reach out. We can work with you and help you understand your chemistry. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the office, 678-501-5172. Reach out through the website, go put in a request for some additional information and let me know when you're available. Have a wonderful day and be blessed.